Hello and welcome to another episode of the Yellow Gloves podcast. My name's Chris and it's been a while. We last spoke at the end of your awards show and there haven't been any cards, so it's been a late start for Cage Warriors, which is par for the course really. They tend to do this. But we're finally back. Cage Warriors 166 in San Diego. Wilson Hayes versus Toby Misek in the main event. A 9-fight card, 3 heavyweight fights, which, if you know me, it's not a good thing. In all honesty, it wasn't an incredibly exciting card, and I think outside of the main card, everything else was pretty dull. There were some good moments for some fighters, but not a card I'll be... I watched it yesterday. I'm recording this on the Sunday, and if not for my handy notes, I probably would have forgotten a lot of what happened in the earlier fights. So let's get into this like we always do. We'll start with the main event and we'll work our way down to the very first fight on the prelims. So main event was, as I mentioned, Wilson Hayes versus Toby Misek. Anyone who knows me knows I love Wilson Hayes. I've mentioned him on this podcast so many times. He's just a proper legend. I tweeted this before the fight, but the fact he's still going at 39, whooping on younger fighters, headlining cards, and just does it all. Just a proper veteran of the game, a legend of the Yellow Gloves. I mean, he's been fighting for Cage Warriors for a very long time. Obviously, a massive period where he was at the UFC, but if you count how long he's actually been representing the organisation, it's been a while. Toby Misek, on the other hand, made his second Cage Warriors appearance, so lost via KO to Roberto Hernandez last year, which also Roberto Hernandez now fighting for bantamweight gold in March against Liam Gittins. I've been asking for this guy to get a fight in Europe for the longest time, so I'm really happy that Cage Warriors managed to put that together. But on this fight, I mean, it didn't last very long. It's a weird one because actually I thought Toby Misek fought a really good fight, kept a very low stance early, obviously afraid of the Wilson Hayes takedown, but him fighting out of southpaw was a look that was troubling Wilson Hayes. The straight shots were all landing. Hayes was punching the air early, just swinging and missing on a lot of his strikes. Toby Misek in and out, not striking in combination or staying in the pocket, I think. But Wilson Hayes was ready to pounce, whenever. He closed the distance. And Misek, I think, probably his best strike, in my opinion, was this straight left to the body that he landed a few times. Hayes was just getting outgunned on the feet by just a faster, slicker striker. But old man strength always wins out. Toby Misek extended or overextended on one of his strikes, and Hayes landed a brutal left hand over the top that dropped him. Almost an epic moment for Wilson Hayes at 39. He's never had a professional knockout in his career, despite how many fights has this man had? I'm trying to do math while podcast. 41 fights as a pro, 0 knockouts, but dropped Misek with a massive, like I said, left hand over the top. But how does Hayes tend to end his fights? Very simple. Ends up in mount, transitions to half guard, and just sinks a beautiful head and arm choke in. Misek tapped immediately. Incredible win for Wilson Hayes. Just outstanding. 39 years young, still going. Just tremendous. I love seeing this guy fight. He wants to fight in Glasgow. Get him the damn fight. There's so many cool opponents that you can put for him on the European circuit. I just think that you can really build someone's name off of him, former UFC fighter, and again, someone who's fought for Cage Warriors for a long time. Now at 145 pounds, which I think he looked quite good. He looked like a shrunken down Yoel Romero almost. He looked awesome at 145. I love that he's just still chugging along. He's averaging 2 or 3 fights a year. The fact that he fought on the very first card of the year tells me that if he wants to fight in Glasgow, then that's a few months from now. He's probably going to do another 2 or 3 again this year. Just love to see this man go at it, and great to see him in the win column again. In the co-main event, we had Mason Jones versus Bryce Logan. Mason Jones obviously needs no introduction, but if for whatever reason you listen to this podcast and you don't know what trajectory Mason Jones has been on recently, 2-0 since returning to Cage Warriors. Both wins via finish. A really, really good win against Jan Lias, who is supremely underrated despite back-to-back losses in the Yellow Gloves. But in all fairness, Mason Jones just shouldn't be anywhere near this level anymore and should really be in the UFC. But here we are. Bryce Logan, on the other hand, making his Cage Warriors debut, former LFA lightweight champion, fought for Bellator as well. Same guy who KO'd Peter Queally last year in Dublin. So he's got some pedigree about him and some notoriety in the UK and Ireland MMA scene. But what you had effectively here from Cage Warriors, which could look like shoddy matchmaking to some, but it's a former regional champ in Bryce Logan versus a former Cage Warriors champion. So it kind of made sense to match them up. Round one, Mason Jones just made his reads early. The V-step, just cutting off so much space. And I'd say that's probably Mason Jones's best trait, is just his unbelievable ability to just make fighters appear as though they're fighting in like a really tiny, confined space. Like, he makes the cage tiny. If you've ever been inside a standard mixed martial arts cage, you know that it might look small on TV, but when you actually go in it, it's pretty spacious. And he made Bryce Logan look like he was fighting in just a little alleyway, a little corridor, and down that alleyway was basically a deranged man in Mason Jones, just stalking him, chasing him down. Logan did some good things in this fight. Like, I think that he was afraid to strike in combination, and it made sense because even his singular strikes, like the calf kicks, Mason Jones was catching them and returning fire. I loved Mason Jones's uppercut, and actually it spelled the beginning of the end for Bryce Logan in round 2, which we'll get to. But in my notes, I literally had that Mason Jones making some good reads, and I think the uppercut is a shot that he's looking to find as the killer here. Just seemed like he really had his timing down on the uppercut. Looked like he was using the uppercut to start a combination instead of using it at the end of a combination. So just looking to cause absolute carnage, as Mason Jones quite often does. But yeah, Jones was just straight up swarming and overwhelming Logan, who just started to do some good things towards the end of round 1, don't get me wrong, and was landing a little bit, but Mason Jones, it was all his round in the first. And then round 2 it's just textbook Mason Jones stalking away at Logan, staggered him with a really sneaky left hook. Again, it was the cutting of the cage for me, just made it look so restricted. At one point he had I think it was like a left hook and then a straight and then just an oblique kick at the end of the combination, like it was some Tekken shit. Like he was throwing some wild techniques, and me, I love an oblique kick, and any of that degenerate behavior I'm all here for. The oblique kick was beautiful, and I think that once Mason Jones started to loosen up with his combinations and diversify what he was throwing, that's when Logan really started to fall off. And like I mentioned, it was the uppercut that really started to change the tide of the fight in Jones's favor. Lands one, swarms Logan against the fence, elbows, gets the tie clinch in, lands a knee and drops Logan. Jones just started pounding away at him. I think Chris Lieben was the ref and just refused to stop the fight at that point. I think it was Lieben. And yeah, wouldn't stop the fight. So, Jones effectively brought Logan back to his feet, landed a few more knees for good measure, dropped him again. Referee decided he'd seen enough. There's not much to say here, guys, about Mason Jones. He's just running through everyone now in Cage Warriors. When he's in the groove offensively, I think he's a handful for any fighter on the planet. I really do think that if you don't figure out his footwork early, if you don't figure out how to move side by side, move laterally, he's gonna cause you some problems, because he hits quite hard. Not only does he hit hard, but his damage is also concussive. He can grapple. He's just a tremendous fighter. He shouldn't be here. Don't get me wrong, it's like the George Hardwick situation, or Paul Hughes, or Jordan Vucenic. I love talking about them on the pod, and it's great to have them. Reese McHugh is another one. It's great to have them in Cage Warriors, because it lets me, have a platform to talk about these great fighters. But in all actuality, I mean, Mason Jones needs to be back in the UFC like 3 months ago. It's insane. I can't imagine he spends the rest of the year here. It makes sense that they've not thrown a title his way. And I think that's because this is very much a short-term thing for Mason Jones. Maybe now I've said that, they'll go and throw him one, but it seems very pointed that he's only fighting. He's fighting around the belt. He's not fighting for the belt, and I think that probably stands for something. So maybe that's the last time we've seen Mason Jones in the yellow gloves. Maybe we'll see him again, but just a tremendous fight. Bryce Logan, I think get him back in there. I think he's a good litmus test for a lot of 155ers. But yeah, in this fight, he had nothing for Mason Jones. We then had Chasen Blair versus Orlando Sanders Jr. Chasen Blair, a Cage Warriors, a San Diego regular, lost to Hassan Zada at the end of last year. Just a really slick submission finish for Hassan Zada with the knee bar. But Chasen Blair's been a real prolific finisher in the yellow gloves. Oh, just a super athlete, a guy who wrestles and hits extremely fucking hard. Chasen Blair's a massive prospect. It's one of those where people will look at his record and think, meh. But some fighters don't have the Hollywood records when they start off, and you need to lose to learn, right? And I think Chasen Blair coming into this fight was 3-2. But from what we've seen of him, he's just a tremendous watch, in all honesty. And then Orlando Sanders Jr. making his Cage Warriors debut, riding a 3-fight win streak, all finishes, and his singular loss was via finish. So 2 guys that don't go to the scorecards. So it made sense, my friends, that this would end halfway through round 1, of course. Sanders Jr. played the aggressor early, started walking Blair down, kicking at the calf, winging shots. But one thing about Chasen Blair is it's difficult to fight this guy, because if you press him, he's a very dangerous counterpuncher, based off the fact that he hits extremely hard. But if you let him be the aggressor, he's got the level change, he can take you down, or he can just start throwing some combos. And yeah, this is practically what that was. Like, Sanders played the aggressor early. Blair landed a piston of a straight right hand that sat Sanders down as Sanders was pressing forward. So all of his momentum into that straight right hand. Credit to Sanders, because this fight could have ended a minute before it actually did. He recovered from that right hand, got back to his feet, didn't really seem to have his bearings about him. Chasen Blair cracked him with another massive right hand, put a head kick behind it, and another straight right hand, and Sanders Jr. just wasn't dropping. It was insane. And then another head kick from Blair, right hook, front kick to the face, more right hooks. I don't know. I even wrote it in my notes. I wrote, how the fuck is Sanders still standing? Chasen Blair was taunting him, like arms in the air, as he was wobbling against the fence. But it was the left hook that put the nail in the coffin for Sanders Jr. Blair just slumped him against the fence. Referee stepped in. A nasty, violent finishing sequence. Chasen Blair is pure box office. He's been one of the gems of this Cage Warriors San Diego scene. He's right there with your, Anthony Orozco's, Teddy Stringer, Roberto Hernandez, and Bobby Winther is also on this card. Just, there are some really good fighters at this level and in this region, and it's good to see that Cage Warriors is tapping into it. It'd be lovely to see these guys fight in Europe. I know Chasen Blair already did. It'd just be nice to really continue to integrate them in the UK scene, because I think there's so many interesting fights for them here against meaningful names. And it's why I'm so happy that Roberto Hernandez is finally getting his title shot in the UK. But Chasen Blair, not much else to say here. 4-2 now. Keep an eye on this guy, because at 170 pounds, he's just pure chaos. Reminds me a little bit of Tyron Woodley, a bit more, less explosive. I think Tyron Woodley at his peak had some ridiculous athleticism and explosiveness, but Chasen Blair has that similar blend of wrestling and just freakish power. And yeah, I cannot wait to see this guy fight again. We then had Devin Goodale versus Bobby Winther, which was a very interesting fight, and actually probably my favourite fight on the card, and might be the one I dedicate the most time to. This episode's probably going to be a bit short, because prelims weren't incredibly moving or exciting, but Devin Goodale making his second Cage Wars appearance. His prior appearance was in 2022. Goodale, of course, a cancer survivor, which I think makes his story all the more beautiful, and seeing the journey he's on as an undefeated fighter is tremendous. And just to see him fight in the cage, considering everything he's had to deal with, I think it's incredible, really. Bobby Winther, as I mentioned, one of my favourite fighters in the San Diego circuit, making his third appearance. Both guys undefeated, so it was 4-0 Goodale versus 2-0 Bobby Winther. Winther has been just, again, I used it earlier for Chasen Blair about pure box office. I think Winther has been that too. Like, he's just a freak on the ground, weird, like janky power on the feet. I think he's just such a fun fighter to watch. And really, round one was the closest round of the fight. Goodale charging Winther down, pressing him against the fence, full intention to get Winther down to the canvas. Winther probably had one of the biggest moments of the round, which was this really clean elbow after breaking from the clinch, which was, again, this guy's super slick, and it's no surprise to see him striking in such a manner. Both guys fighting with some real energy early. Winther had the first takedown of the fight as well, which is interesting because that's all that Goodale really wanted at the beginning. And, you know, when we talk more about this fight, it's the takedowns that and the work on the ground for Goodale that ended up being the decisive factor in this fight. What I loved about the counter wrestling or the defensive grappling from Goodale was whenever Winther would try to get him down, he had this really nice like standing giddy, kind of like an anaconda. It wasn't threatening the submission, but it was one of those where he was really using it to build back to his feet. Goodale stung Winther at one point. Winther clocked him back. It was like, just hammer and tongs in this round. Winther ducked under a spinning elbow and managed to get Goodale down. But for me in this fight, what really, this round was really close. And if you scored it for Winther, I've got, nothing to say here. I personally scored it for Goodale. But it was very close. I think what swung it for Goodale, in my opinion, was that, there was a standing hammer fist, which was obviously quite an impactful strike. The knee to the body was really good. I think he had the more impactful shot selection overall. I think Winther had probably the best moment with that elbow off the break. It was really early. Super competitive round. Like I said, both guys went hammer and tongs. The pace was insane. And, when the bell went for the first round, I thought we could be in for one of those Fight of the Year candidates. And yeah, it just didn't end up being that, because what Devin Goodale did for the last two rounds is just tremendous. Came out like a bat out of hell in round two, spamming shots and just, his chin just standing tough against someone like Winther, who was striking back. Winther had a takedown attempt, but you started to see that he was getting overwhelmed by Goodale. The snap downs, it's really tiring when you're, if you've ever wrestled or grappled, you're trying to get a guy down and, you're putting everything into it, and he's just pushing down on your head, or he's restricting your breathing. It's quite a laborious thing if you're grappling. Now imagine if you're fighting and you've got people watching. It's a whole different dynamic. But yeah, for me, Goodale, just his defensive base, grappling wise, meant that he was winning all of the wrestling exchanges. And then once the fight, I guess, stabilized on the ground and Goodale started to take over halfway through, there was a few nasty elbows that just got through the guard of Winther, cut him right open, like on the hairline. Winther was fishing for the armbar, but Goodale was conscious of that and just fought really well. A massive onslaught on the ground. Tried to get the rear naked choke, but man, I'll say it again probably a few more times while we break down this fight, but Bobby Winther, I don't know what this man's made of, because zero quitting him in a fight where a lot of guys would have quit. And props to Goodale, because he put a pasting on Bobby Winther in round two. Just a total beatdown, loads of strikes, loads of elbows, submission attempts. Just one of those gruesome ones where the ref could have really stopped in at numerous points, but Winther there was just a little bit of him that just showed that he's still in the fight. He was still trying to build up to his feet. I had it a 10-8 round in round two, so I had it 20-17 Goodale going into the third. Round three, Goodale wasted no time. I think less than 10 seconds into the round, he already had Winther on his back and was already teeing off on him. I think Goodale was less explosive in round 3 and definitely more controlling of Winther, still landing a lot of strikes. Winther still trying to build to his feet, but it was just outrageously dominant from Devin Goodale. The performance of the night by far, 30-25 for me, 2 10-8 rounds, round 2 and round 3. Devin Goodale's now 5-0, and I'm really, really hoping that they throw him in here again. At 170, there's so many fun matches. Get him some more fights, because I think that it could be another really profitable US fighter for Cage Warriors. Bobby Winther, on the other hand, don't give up on this guy. If you're a fan and you're one of those people that goes away after a loss, don't, because anyone who shows that ounce of grit and that ounce of, the amount of wherewithal he had despite getting, the shit beat out of him, for lack of a better term, Bobby Winther will be back, and he'll be back and whooping on people in no time. I'm sure when they go back to San Diego, he'll be on that card ready to avenge his loss. And unfortunately, his teammate, Anthony Orozco, who was supposed to fight on this card, that one didn't go through, unfortunately, due to a late cancellation. I think Willingham Jr., who was his opponent, wasn't medically cleared to fight. So, another massive prospect, didn't get the chance to. So I think on the next San Diego card, expect to see Bobby Winther back, looking for revenge, looking for that dub, and obviously Orozco back in action. But for Devin Goodale Jr., cannot wait to see this man in action again. 5-0 now. Keep an eye on him, because he's got an incredible story, a very emotional story, and he's also got the goods in the cage as well to back it up. And now this is where the card gets fairly, not to rag on any of these fighters, because I think a lot of them had great performances, but the fights in and of themselves weren't very interesting. First one up here, which was the main card opener, which was Corvin Allen versus Xavier Vines. Corvin Allen, of course, making his second Cage Warriors appearance, had a brilliant finish back in December, I believe. And then Xavier Vines also making his second appearance. He's got the pink shorts. I love this guy. I love his shot selection. I've said it before on the pod. Had an excellent fight with Miguel Painbert, which he won last year. Painbert also on this card, so we'll talk about his fight in no time. But yeah, and this fight was good in the first round. I think Corvin Allen had a very wrestling heavy approach, and Vines was punishing that, and using his great straight strikes that he has, knows how to use his range really well, and really reversing the takedowns brilliantly was Vines, which, after round 1 I thought that Corvin Allen would probably fade, but props to Allen. In round 2, knocked the mouthpiece out of Vines with a flurry of strikes, which I don't think Vines ever really recovered from, and I'd be interested to hear his side of things, because from there he just couldn't combat the takedowns at all. Allen just blitzed Vines, managed to secure his takedown, pounding away at him. Didn't actually get a finish in the second round, but just controlled proceedings. Vines was almost comfortable with taking the damage, had his head down to the canvas practically the whole fight. We'll get into round 3 because it was practically the same as round 2. Vines tried a really kind of labour jumping knee, and Allen used that forward momentum to just take Vines down. I think the only disappointing part from this fight, and I think Allen did well to just take advantage of a guy who clearly just couldn't hang with him in the grappling department for the entire 15 minutes, maybe because he was still dazed from that strike that Allen threw. But for me, I think it was a little bit disappointing that Allen was unable to finish the fight. He effectively had Vines face down on the canvas for I'd say 8 or 9 minutes of the fight. And was striking away at him, but it was all strike and then try to just position him and strike again and just make sure he's not moving or trying to come out of that position. It just seemed very much like he just wanted the position over the finish. And I think if you asked him, he'd probably be a bit disappointed in that too. But really, what can you do? You've got a guy pretty much dead to rights. You're gonna just do what you need to do to get the W, and he did that. Props to Vines late in the round, had a spinning elbow that landed, but Allen ate it. Went for the head and arm choke after taking him down. I think if he'd slid his leg under Vines' body, because Vines is quite. I think one of the reasons why Allen couldn't finish him is Vines moved a lot on the ground, like face down on the mat, but he was always very conscious of what's coming offensively from Allen. But I think slides his leg under Vines. I think in that head and arm choke, Vines probably has no real ability to move, is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, I had it 29-28 Allen. I think he fought really well. Would have loved to have seen him get the finish though. He's now 4-2, and I'm sure he's someone that we'll see fairly regularly. And Xavier Vines, I still think there's something there with him. I love the pink shorts. I think he's got a very distinct style. I think he's a good striker, and for sure someone we'll see fight in the yellow gloves again shortly. All right, allow me to rattle off some of these prelims because props to the fighters who won, and there were some good performances, like I said, but I don't think a lot of these fights were interesting. And like I said to you, if you're going to give me 3 heavyweight fights in a 9-fight card and 3 heavyweight fights, the first 4 fights on the card, 3 of them were heavyweights. It's not something I'm going to engage with very positively. Giovanni Saran versus Elijah Harris. Saran 5'9" heavyweight, which if you're going to have a heavyweight fight, give me a 5'9" heavyweight. God bless the Cage Warriors San Diego scene. Saran making his debut, Combate and Bellator vet. Elijah Harris, will know him fairly well because his 5th appearance since 2022 with the promotion. Someone who does lose a fair bit. It was 5'9" versus 6'2", and of course Giovanni Saran being 5'9" would be the one who wins the fight. I thought he fought fairly well. I had it 29-27 to Saran. Obviously there was a point deduction for Elijah Harris in there. Saran had some good strikes to the body, some nice hooks to the body actually, which I really liked. I felt as though he probably broke Harris's nose towards the end of the fight because Harris was breathing heavily and quite laboured. But I scored it 29-27 to him. He won via majority decision. One of the judges had it a draw because of the deduction. I don't really think that Harris was ever in the fight. Round 1 was the closest, but I think he had the 9-9 in round 2, and then round 3 was very much Saran. I'm sure we'll see Saran again. There's always heavyweights knocking about in the US and in San Diego, so I'm sure they'll throw him another fight. Miguel Painbert defeated Carlos Elizaraz via split decision. I personally, in all honesty, thought Elizaraz won the fight, and this one was actually a fairly good back and forth. Elizaraz making his Cage Warriors debut. Painbert, someone we're familiar with, mentioned earlier, he lost to Xavier Vines last year via decision. That was a pretty fun fight. In this one, there was a lot of stalling against the fence, I felt, from both guys. I'd never really understood the approach from either guy, 'cause neither person was dominating in those exchanges. They were really just flipping around on the fence for most of the fight. I think round 3 was amazing, and actually one of the highlights of the prelims was round 3. I had it 19-19 going into this round. Elizaraz dropped Painbert early with like a thumping right hook, I believe it was. Painbert dropped instinctively to the double leg, and we went back against the fence. Painbert had a really nice Kimura sweep this whole fight, which he used to gain control of the clinch whenever it looked like he was almost going down. But Elizaraz's hands are really slick. I wish he'd thrown more early. He was taking Painbert apart in round 3. Painbert had a nice roundhouse kick in here, but then got caught with like a double jab, a massive right hand as well for good measure. Just a really electric third round, a very close fight. I had it 29-28 Elizaraz. Painbert won via split decision. I don't really begrudge it, but I think you've got to give Painbert round 1, and you definitely have to give him round 3, in my opinion. Round 2 is round 2 might be the swing round, I think, for folks, or maybe round 1. I'm not sure, but fairly confident in saying that for me, using the scoring criteria, that Elizaraz won. But again, a close fight. So, like I said, we had 3 heavyweight fights, and another one here was Diego Vasquez versus Sean Rose. Vasquez, BJJ black belt, making his Cage Warriors debut. Sean Rose, of his second appearance in Cage Warriors, lost back in September last year on one of the San Diego cards. Diego Vasquez, like I said, BJJ black belt, so it makes sense that he'd win via armbar. Immediately, his first action of the fight was to just get a single leg, get the fight to the ground. Rose was practically immobilized from round one the minute that Vasquez had the body triangle in. Vasquez was doing a lot of great work on the ground. I'd love to see him strike more. Like, I get that you're this, you're a BJJ black belt. You want to submit a guy and all of that. But I think, if he'd even, let's say if he'd thrown 20 or 30 strikes in that first round, he might have just had the fight stopped because Rose was doing nothing. Round two, Rose didn't look too bad. Like, he was kicking at the calves of Vasquez, and Vasquez started to look so laboured and so tired to the point where I thought this fight's gonna, Rose is just gonna knock this guy out. There was actually the best part of the fight was Rose just hip bumping the head of Vasquez, who wouldn't let go of his legs. So he was basically just like, just thrusting into the head of Vasquez, which, MMA fans love a meme and love a funny video. So if you've not seen that fight, go and hunt it out, because it is some pretty funny shit. If you remember the Dontel Mays one a few years back in the UFC, I don't want to get too graphic here, but yeah, he's basically just shoving his crotch area into his opponent's head and getting him to get off him effectively. But I think that the most kind of poor fight IQ in this one, I think, from Rose. Vasquez again tried to dive for another takedown. He was, guys, trust me, he was dead to rights. He was knackered, and Rose just followed him to the ground. And when he did that, he thought, I've got this guy. I'm just going to end up on top. Don't do that with a BJJ guy. Vasquez, it doesn't matter how tired these guys are, you still have instincts and you still have things you've drilled, especially as a black belt, that you've drilled over and over and over again. And yeah, Vasquez swept him, and that was all she wrote. Swept him, even though he was knackered. Rose stepped in the wrong direction on the ground, gave Vasquez the mount. Vasquez used the mount to transition to the back, isolated the arm, snatched it up. Rose tapped. For a minute there, I thought Vasquez was done for, but apparently not, and he improves to 3-1 as a professional. Really nice jiu-jitsu base, clearly, but cardio is going to be a problem for this guy. And I think that if he doesn't start incorporating strikes into his ground game, then better fighters are going to figure him out pretty quickly. And then the final fight that we'll talk about, which was the prelim opener, was Devin Simmons versus Chandrik Kindle. Again, another heavyweight fight. Chandrik Kindle and Devin Simmons both making their pro debuts. Actually, Kindle's first fight since 2021, like including his AMI times. And yeah, Devin Simmons, pretty good AMI record, I think 5-1 or 6-1. Not a great amount to talk about this fight. Round one started pretty explosively. Kindle, dropped Simmons with an overhand right, I believe, on the temple. Just 20 seconds into the fight, I think Simmons recovered really well and then just took over from there. I scored it 29-28 to him. Beating up Kindle's lead leg, I think, was really good. Both guys, to be honest, were just throwing heat for pretty much the whole fight. What I loved about Simmons is he's got a really good Muay Thai base, standing elbows, teeps to the body, the calf kicks were there. I think the more Muay Thai that we saw out of Devin Simmons, like whenever he brought that out was when he looked at his best, instead of just standing in the pocket and swinging with Kindle, who clearly that's all that he wanted to do, was just try and go back to back with Simmons and just beat the crap out of each other. But I think when Simmons was at his best was when he was patient and when he was more elusive of his striking patterns. Superman punch as well was really, really good. He beat Kindle to pretty much every punch whenever he fought on the outside. Good performance from him. I scored it 29-28, 1-0 now as a pro. Probably the most interesting heavyweight on this card for me. Just the way he's built, he just seems like a really strongly built heavyweight, and not just a guy who's 5'9" and could probably make middleweight if he tried. So that kind of caps off the card for me. It wasn't a very memorable one. Like, I'll remember Wilson Hayes' win because I fucking love Wilson Hayes. Mason Jones, Chasen Blair, Devin Goodale. Like, I think those four guys had really performances that will stick with you. The rest of the card was pretty disposable. Props to the guys who won. I think there weren't bad performances on this card from the winners, but a lot of the fights left a lot to be desired. When you've got a 9-fight card, you're really banking on catching fire early, and when your entire prelim card is effectively all finishes apart from like a heavyweight submission, it's just, I don't know, it just felt like the card wasn't as good as it could have been. Maybe if Orozco had fought and we had like Chance Escom versus Ilyas Fakiri was supposed to be on this card, maybe it would have been better. But again, it's this thing. I'm starting to warm to the San Diego scene because I'm starting to get attached to certain fighters, but it's what I've been saying from day one. I don't get as excited for these cards. I don't get as excited to discuss them or break them down as I do the cards that are typically in Europe, because the standard of fights is so much better. But yeah, I mean, it's good to be back, like podcasting. It's been a few months. I've had planned to do some content before the fights had come back, but things have been incredibly busy for me, and it's been nice to kind of have a break from doing the podcast. But what we've got coming up is really good. We got Cage Warriors 167 and 168 in March on back-to-back days, a Friday and a Saturday, which is super exciting for me, because we're basically going to be doing 2 pods effectively. And we've got Cage Warriors 170 in Dublin. So yeah, these next few months are going to be brilliant. I think the quality of the cards that we've got so far, Vucenic is back. We've got Liam Gittins versus Roberto Hernandez. Miguel Pagani's fighting. George Hardwick is back as well. So it's just going to be a fun time to cover these cards again. But for this one, not an incredibly memorable one. But if you've listened for 40 minutes, props to you. And if you've come this far, if you can please leave a like or review the podcast wherever you're listening to it on, just helps kind of build the bandwidth of what I'm doing here. As the only podcast that solely covers Cage Warriors, I think we're doing something pretty unique, and I think we cover it in a good level with a lot of analysis, and not just doing the basic kind of breakdown of fights. So yeah, if you enjoyed listening to this, I'd appreciate some feedback and some positive words. But other than that, I will catch you all in March.